and welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy days in order to come on and talk with me about vulnerability management. As Laura said, this is actually part 1 of 3 of a series I'm going to be doing. I'll mention more of that coming up at the end. But today we're here to talk about context. What is this funny thing called context? What do I mean by this? Why is it important to us? We'll talk a little bit on that, but how can we actually find context information? So what I want to cover off as part of the webcast today, give you a little bit of a bio. Laura's done a lot of that already, but just have a little slide up here on that. And then we'll talk about just what is contextual information and why does it really matter to us. Then how to find contextual information in your enterprise assets. That's what we're going to talk about first. Give some examples of how we can find it. And specifically, I'm going to talk about Windows systems at the moment today. And then we're going to take a look at finding some contextual information in the cloud. Where can I get it? How can I get access to this information? And even maybe how I could store some information in the cloud. We'll talk on that. And then that funny little pain that we all live with about ownership information and details about the people and how do we get some information on that. Then we'll do a final wrap up and answering the questions on things. So without any further ado, that's where we're going to go. So Laura said, I work for the government. I'm actually now the technical lead for a network consolidation and migration project. So working with the government, we have lots of networks. In the department I work with, we're looking at consolidating things down, probably going to end up moving to cloud services as well, but technical lead for a lot of the stuff going on this project. So lots of fun there. And I've done security research work, worked for 10 years as an organization doing that, related to vulnerability management as well as cyber automation. I was security operations prime for one of our agencies here as well. So played the whack-a-mole game like a lot of you may be doing. Yeah, those Friday nights and the long weekends when you just aren't at home. Yeah, been there, bought that t-shirt a long time ago too, and understand the challenges we have from the defensive perspective. And spent a whole bunch of time in a large national telco doing LAN, WAN, man network design implementation, then moved over into security as well. So broad background from where I've spent my life. Also have a degree out of STI. So lots of cool things out from STI. So I did get my degree from there as well. You can see all those fun papers if you want posted in the SANS reading room. I will actually give you a little bit of info today that actually stems from one of those papers. I don't give you the link to the paper itself, but I give you where the results and the scripting is. I do teach, as Laura said, certified instructor with SANS. I've taught the pen testing classes with 560, taught 504 for the hacker and the intrusion, like that class. I've taught 566 as well, our critical controls. I've now, probably for the past 3 years, I've been focusing solely on the Management 516, which is our Managing Security Vulnerabilities Enterprise and Cloud class that I'm a co-author of. So I've been having lots of fun, both writing the course material and now focusing solely on instructing this class. So that's who I am, that's where I've come from, but that's not why you're here. So let's just get on with this. So what is contextual information? That's always a really good question, or it's interesting to get the answer that some people have with regards to what is contextual information. So think about this for a second in your view of the world. What do you think is contextual information? And what I want to say is we need contextual information because it helps us to get a better understanding. And contextual information, from my view, is really anything that's going to help us get a little more details, a little more information, better understanding of what we're taking a look at. This could be a piece of data, could be referencing a system. It could be about, I don't know, your own name and okay, what email addresses are known publicly. That's all extra context. So really it's to help us get a better understanding of something that we have in front of us is what I class as contextual information. And some examples of this. Who's the system administrator of a system in question? Who's the business process owner of what we are going to end up having to modify, or that we do modify, or that has it hosted, the automation and computerization of that process is hosted on the system in question that we need to bring down. Example of things here. We've got dependent systems, more contextual information. When you think about people And we talk about what's critical inside the organization. We get things like databases. Okay, great. We've got where the crown jewels are stored, maybe how we do some processing, maybe order taking. But also there's underlying systems that we don't often think about. And when we look at dependencies in here, it's like, yeah, maybe my order taking is the most important, but my external DNS server's down. They can't get to that necessarily. So understanding interdependencies within systems, the installed software, IP addresses, all of this are just some examples of what I consider contextual information. And quite frankly, there can be hundreds of pieces of information that is available to us, depending on what kind of asset we actually have. So that's what we're meaning, what is contextual. And we need this in vulnerability management. As an example, to conduct a scan, we need some contextual information about the environment or about the system in question. That could be the IP address. We might need to try and understand our network architecture, because if I have, let's pick on firewalls segmenting my network off, if I'm not running agents, or even if I am, I may need to know where those are. So understanding the architecture and what network access controls are in place to allow a scan to work. Those are pieces of contextual information that can help me out to make sure a scan can happen. Now, other things that we need, as an example, so that was for an enterprise scan. If you're doing code and application scanning, so running a DAS scanner as an example, or maybe you're doing SAST. Regardless, we need some information there as well. Maybe it's the URL. Where's the source code located so I can actually scan the source code? And credentials to get into a system in question if I'm looking at it from the outside with DAST, because it's normally the front end we look at. How do I get the credentials in? Again, extra contextual pieces of information that can help us know more and understand about the system in question. So summarizing that is, yeah, anything that helps expand our understanding of what's in front of it. And just some more examples we have in there. And just see how some of this really is, in my terminology anyways, this is just extra context, extra details, extra information. The problem is we often don't have this readily available to us. Or depending on your organization and your environment, we might have access to some, or it's outdated. Or if we don't have any tools that are actually pulling this at all, I don't have any more than what some of the basic information, like I know the systems, I might be able to get the IP addresses because that's maintained on a spreadsheet. Yeah, hopefully that's not the case for you, but it is a common thing that we see. We don't have access to a lot of this extra information that we really need to be able to do vulnerability management so much better. So how can we actually find some of this contextual information inside our environments? And as I said, first, I'm going to take a look at enterprise assets. So what we'd be sitting with inside our organizations. And with that, I'm going to focus specifically here from a Windows system, because quite frankly, we aren't going to have the time to step through all the different possibilities, looking at Linux, or just as another prime example, how do I get it off of IoT or from mobile devices, etc. But if we were just starting out, and we have in most organizations, if you don't have much detail right now, hitting your Windows systems is probably going to be the biggest bang for your buck. It's probably going to hit about 80% of your organization, if not more of the devices. So being able to do this, we're going to want to directly grab it. If I do not have tools that can help me do this, grab it from PowerShell. And today there are tools that can actually connect and do give us some contextual information. Think about Active Directory. It's connecting into our Windows systems right now today and has a bunch of information about the systems in question. Can I connect that and be able to extract the data to be able to leverage this? But here, if I can't do that, PowerShell, your friend, really it is. It can do just about anything for you that you want in the environment and gather the information. Example in here, I can get running processes. Here you can, with the get-process command, with the include username, so I can even see who's running it. I can get scheduled tasks, RDP sessions or users, TCP UDP connections. It's just a few small examples. I can get system information about this. I can get IP addresses. I can get the system name. I can get DNS entries, host tables, ARP tables. Basically anything that's stored inside the system, I'm going to be able to query and get. Now, A common problem that we have in our organizations, from a vulnerability management perspective, is that inventory, our asset inventory. Yeah, problem. I don't know what even hardware is currently sitting out there, let alone what software is available and inside my environment. Now, to help you do some of this, if you want to get some software information to start with, the link I've got here on the stream, it's a GitHub repository. This links back to a paper that I've written on asset inventory. But if you go to GitHub under my directory that's on there, Jonathan Risto, asset inventory, actually gives you 3 scripts, but you can grab the PowerShell one, the WMIC, depending which version of Windows you're running. That's been deprecated now, so you might not be able to use that anymore. But it's going to, that script will go and query a system and give all the installed software on there that is currently sitting in the system and is properly registered out to the 32 or 64-bit registry settings locations and give you the information back. So I can get all the details that's stored out in the registry, have access to it using PowerShell. Another example, there's a white paper from an STI student, Kyle, I never do his last name well, but it's on the screen there. And they've given you the link, just the shortcut cut over to the SANS reading room location where it's stored on the Ignite with the shortened URL on there. But this is a white paper, and it's for PowerShell Cyber Defensive Framework. And it's got a series of scripts that are in there to help you collect all kinds of information off your systems. That is going to be helpful for you and let you get more of the contextual information. If you do not have systems that are able to connect out, you can at least run the PowerShell, dump the information out. If you want it in a CSV and a JSON format, whichever format you want, PowerShell gives you lots of options. Then you could actually take that out and start leveraging this information inside your environment and have it collected for your organization. Big one people always want, software inventory. What in the world's installed in my environment? Both of these will actually have options for you to be able to collect information about the software that's installed on any computer. So take a look if you are having that challenge, but PowerShell is going to be your friend in order to collect data from your Windows systems out there. Similar kind of things for those that have the Linux, you can do it from any kind of scripting you want on there. You could do Python, you could do bash scripting, any of the above. If you want shell from a C shell, whatever is your preference. You'd be able to script up similar things to do the queries because the information is stored on the system. I can get the IP information. I can get the host names. I can get installed packages on the system on the Linux front as well. You can do the same kind of querying, just it's going to be in a different command structure, different sequence, and how you collect that from multiple systems. But the idea is the same. You're going out and collecting it. It's just in this case, PowerShell with Windows is going to hit a lot of your environment. So that's one way in how we can collect a lot of details from the systems that are inside our environment. But that's not the only thing we really have to worry about inside our organizations. We've been shifting and moving a lot of our stuff to the cloud. Oh no. We've got it sitting out there in the cloud. Rather nebulous. But how do we get the information about our cloud assets? You may be able to and might have browsed through some of the options that are available to us from Azure, AWS, GCP, any of them from the console. So you go in through the web console and you can display details about the assets in question. Yeah, that's not cumbersome per se, but to try and leverage it by doing it through the web interface yourself, yeah, you're going to be a slow process, have to manually record stuff down, or some possibilities for you there. But what that's leveraging are the APIs that the cloud providers have available to us. Their web interface is just querying out there and getting it. So for us to get access to the system and the details in the cloud, yeah, you're going to want to leverage the APIs. And we have a lot of tools today that can grab information for us from the APIs themselves. Our current scanners can connect in, grab the system information. All of our big vulnerability scanners can do this, and even some of the lesser known ones connect in, and some of the SaaS service offerings also give it to us. Our service management tools can connect in and grab information. More and more are connecting to the APIs. But if you don't have a product, or you're not able to get the license to let you do this connection, because depending on the vendor, you may need a license. there's still hope for you. We can even collect some of this information from the command line. Using the command line interface to the API, I can get details about what's in my environment. I've given you 2 examples here for all the information about VMs that are stored inside the system. First one with AWS, running from the AWS command, like the console, where you have this and your credentials are in there. AWS EC2 to describe instances, pulls up all the details it has about your EC2. The Azure VM list, same kind of thing. And what information it pulls back, I'm just going to flip here on the screen, and this could be dangerous. Always is trying to put information up here when it may not be when I'm doing a live presentation. But this is an example from Amazon, from the AWS EC2 describe dash instances. And I just want to show you the kinds of information that we can collect here and that do get collected. Here you can see I've got on the screen, I can get my MAC addresses. I have here, I've got interface ID. I'm showing the IP address itself. I can see where this was actually created, the subnet. I can see what groups they're in. And it also pulls this little thing I'll talk about in a second called the tags. So the extra information we can assign to a system. So there's a bunch that are inside here. Criticality we put as a tag. What environment, what operating system, who's the owner of it? So it's something that we can actually do, and I'll come back to this in a second. Pardon me. But you can grab all of this contextual information. You can see here, this is dumped out. I've got it saved as a text file on this system, but I've got all the information about it. It'll tell me what images this is created from. It tells me the operating systems that are installed in some of them as well. And you can dump all the details from what you can query through the APIs can be dumped out, save it in the JSON format. You then have the information available to you on the system. Now I'm going to get that off my screen there, but it's just an example of the API and the type of information that's available. So the assets that we have in the cloud, I'm able to do querying against them. And I showed you here, that was the Amazon EC2. Same thing, but a lot of the different services allow me to query and get access to this data. So worst case, if I don't have any tool that'll let me connect the APIs directly and import it, like pick on my vulnerability scanners right now, I can at least get access to the data. I'm going to be able to pull it in. And doing this, I'd want to set this up and have it automatically polling, grabbing the data. I can do this for my containers. I can do this for what images are stored inside the environment. I can start to query and see some of the dependency information from systems as well. All the data is available inside the cloud instances. And those little things called tags. This is the extra spot where we can store and put information. You saw some that were in there. There was a criticality one. There was an owner in the example that I gave you. We're going to come back to this in a minute, but it's a location where we can put what we feel is important that maybe isn't readily available about the asset. Ownership and our criticality and asset, 2 prime examples. I can create this custom field. It comes back to me in the APIs. Our tools can read this as well. So if I don't have it stored natively, I can start to store this information as part of my cloud assets. So then it's available when we query. If I can import it into my tools directly, the information's available there. So when I find out that Bob is now the business owner of this system, that information, ensure that it gets updated into the cloud environment. We're going to want to have some processes around this, but we'll talk about those coming up a little bit later and some in the next webcast. But at least script this up. So it's going to be automated. We can get the format out, then we can do manual manipulation. The worst case, if we have to, we can do this in a spreadsheet. Large organization, this is going to get cumbersome fast. Even in a small organization, this can get cumbersome. But there is a lot of management that still happens in spreadsheets. I see it all the time. Some organizations, I have had to leverage this as well. This is what we have available. So at least we have the data can be exported so we can start to manipulate if we have no other option available to us. and then start putting it into the business plan, get the budget approved so we can either get some of this automated, get the tools that process this for us, or get the funding in order to get the licenses to let it come into our environment. All of the above, what we're going to want to do to be able to get and store and access the information. Now, third thing I said I wanted to talk about is how do we get that ownership information? How do I know who is the business owner? Who's responsible for this? Even system administrators in large organizations that are multinational, who even is the system administrator that's looking after this? I may not know them. Small organizations, yeah, even mid-size, we probably know the entire IT team. But larger ones, how do I even find out system owner? Yeah, one of the problems we have, and I have nothing I can help you with there, sorry. Yeah, okay, not quite accurate. How can we do this? But it is one of the hardest things that we have to try and figure out, because this really comes down to, if it's from an individual and you don't have any mechanisms and processes with our ITSM or ITOM tools and processes, if we don't have any of those put in place for the organization and keeping things up to date, this comes down to, we learn this over time about what's going on, and it's all up here. So when I leave the organization, all my knowledge goes with, because I can bet that's probably not a part of the handoff, or if it is, I know I've had handoffs from someone who's done several years worth of work. That hour meeting that you have, they brain dump onto you. Yeah, they may very well have mentioned that if you ever have an issue here, go talk to Shelly over here, because she used to be the administrator. But yeah, that doesn't quite stick and stay in your head when that comes down. So it's not well documented. We fail miserably in most organizations doing this. So how can we collect this? Well, let's start leveraging some of our existing processes that we have today. Examples with our change, configuration, incident management. Who's actually making the tickets? Or who needs to be approved or notified when something's happening? When there's an incident, who needs to be told about it and authorize it coming down in order to get remediated? When there's a change happening inside the environment, who's requesting it? Who's mandating it's there? All examples of some of our existing processes internally, we are going to have a starting point with. And this can and often is a bit manual, talking with the change management people, looking at the tickets, seeing who's on the authorization list, where are our process flows going. We need to look at those. It's not always easy, but it's a starting point for us. It may not even be an individual. It could be a group that's flagged out, but at least then you know where to go. You can follow the breadcrumbs. Another example, project approvals, initiations, review boards in the organization, be it project review, management review. It could also be technical review boards. You're going to find the SMEs. You're also going to find the authorities for what's going on. Who's initiating the project? Who pays the regular bills about things? Who cares when something died? The system crashed. Who's the one that's banging on the administrator's door to get stuff fixed? Yeah, those are probably the people that we need to worry about as well, relating to vulnerability management. As I said, it's going to start and give us the leads for where we want to go. Those breadcrumbs pointing us in the right direction. It is hard to do. We also can talk to the system admins. I believe I've already mentioned this. But yeah, who's banging on their door about problems? Who says they need a small tweak done and they don't want to go through change management processes? Oh yeah, it's a small change. It really doesn't need to go through change management. Yeah, we know that. Yeah, drive the bus through a small change is what we're going to try and do. But still, who are they getting the request from? All examples of where we can find and start to gather this information. And we don't want to fall into the trap of what has been happening in our organizations, that we aren't actually maintaining this, understanding it, or even documenting it. I don't want to keep it all in my head. My team needs to understand what's going on. When I don't come into work tomorrow, the person who's picking up needs to be able to follow on. We need to get this documented. I did mention that we also have to worry about keeping it up to date. This is tying into some existing processes. That's our IT operations management and service management. That's helping keep it refreshed. We're going to need to, the updated information is going to want to tie into things like our HR processes. When Jonathan is escorted out the door by security, we kind of need to know that they're no longer the business owner. Or when someone changes positions. I don't know about you, but have you ever been contacted about something going on with the system that you are no longer involved with, haven't been for 12, 18, 24 months, because your name was still listed on something? Yeah, we want to get those updated as people move in the organization. I know I've had those phone calls. It's like, yeah, sorry, I haven't been doing that for 2 years. Ooh, yeah, you can help point them to who was after you, but still, we don't want to be doing that and forcing everybody to do those, try and do the run the racetrack to figure out where it's at right now. So we need to help ensure any of this is recorded. We also want to tie in to get stuff regularly updated. That I can't get into all the mechanisms for that, but it's some stuff that we talk about in our class with Management 516 to be able to do this. But going back to the tag information, this is where we can put some of this data. The system owner, let's put it in there. What's the criticality of the system? And some of our tools, tags can be natively stored in our cloud environment. We can also put tags in a lot of the tools that are out there. So extra information that we custom define. It's really what a tag is. You give it a name of what you want, put the data in there. We can even do that in a lot of the tools for assets that aren't cloud-based. So pick on an asset inventory system. I may be able to put it in there. A service management system that also includes inventory. Pick on something like ServiceNow. Yeah, that's a big product. But you can put the information in. Our vulnerability scanners as well can help us and do allow us to put extra information in. So when we find this out, we're able to put it against the asset in question or the specific piece of software or whatever and wherever we need to put the data. So we want to have that recorded down because next time we need it, it's right there available for us. So all of this contextual stuff, we are going to want to have available. And if you think about this, some of the contextual information I've mentioned today is available to us in our scanners already. We know there's a vulnerability on a system in question. The system's at IP address 10.20.30.40. Okay, I'm starting to marry two pieces of information together. I've also got what's the criticality based on the CVSS score. Oh, now I know that it's an 8.9 critical thing on this system. Oh, that's another piece of contextual information that we can leverage and use. Oh, then I know that it's across 247 systems inside my environment. Or I know this vulnerability is on a container image that runs for 10 minutes and we call it 346,619 times each day. All of those are extra pieces of contextual information to help us understand more details. Looking at the containers, just as an example, I have a vulnerability in a container image, new one just released. We run it for 10 minutes and then it's torn down because it's the short-lived instances, containers by nature. But we call it 10 times a day compared to a vulnerability on a container image runs for 10 minutes. We call it 200 times a day. I can start to see which one I may want to patch first or get remediated if it's not a patch. Then I'll get into more contextual information about where is this located, public facing, internal, is it on a segmented network, is it on a standalone system? All extra contextual information. Now, what can we do with this contextual information? Yeah, that's what we're actually going to talk about in part 2 of the webcast series coming up. We're going to look at how we can leverage context. I've mentioned some today, but we're going to take a look at specifically in vulnerability management, some of the contextual information that is out there that we can collect or that is provided to this. How do we leverage this? What can we do to leverage this context and a wide variety of contextual information? That's coming up on August 10th, 3 p.m. Eastern, same time, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's when it's coming up. And the final in the series is, how can we tell if our program's effective? Yeah, what can we do? How can we measure? What metrics do we have that can help us out here to look at program effectiveness? That's coming up September 14th, 3 p.m. So we've taken a look today, and I'll do a little bit of a wrap up. Hope you come in here. Wrap up for what we covered off today. Now, context matters inside our environment. We need extra details, pieces of information that can help us make better decisions. Think about it from a vulnerability perspective. I know there's a vulnerability. First thing you ask, often, how critical is the vulnerability? Piece of context, I want to know more. Where is it inside our environment? Is there a remediation available for it? 3 simple examples. Okay, when is the patch scheduled to go out? Another piece of context. But it matters, gives us more detail about the systems and questions to help us make better decisions. That's ultimately what we want to do. How do we make it and leverage and use the context so we can make better decisions with the finite resources we have? Because I would love to have that little red easy button. Press the easy button and it's finding all the vulnerabilities. Press the one right beside it to fix all the vulnerabilities. We don't have that. We can't solve all the problems. So we need to make better decisions. What I talked about with the enterprise systems on the Windows side, leveraging PowerShell. Gave you a link in the webcast as well, 2 links actually, for some PowerShell scripts that can help you collect some contextual information of your system in question. Cloud systems, use the APIs. Most of it is exposed to us by the vendors. Either get it automated through tools, or if we have to create our own scripts running from a command line, let's do that and at least get access to the data that is there. And then we'll see how to manipulate it, what we can do with the type of data that's available. And I talked about ownership as well, which is the hardest one to really find. I can't just go out and have it scrape everybody's brain in the organization a script and say, hey, tell me everything you know about this. Yeah, it doesn't work like that yet. Maybe it's coming, but right now we can't. This is the harder one. We have to leverage our processes, look at change tickets, work with the teams that we have to understand who they're interfacing with, who's giving them the directions, who do they need to consult, who do they need to get authorization from to do work. Ties in and we understand then the ownership details. Not going to be perfect, but it's going to start getting us the data that we need. Now, last slide I have. Are there any questions? And while we're waiting for those, this information, we're talking about all of this stuff here. We cover this off in the management class. 3 upcoming sessions that I have, 3 classes that I'm teaching. You can see listed at the bottom. We've got live on and online, the live online format, as well as live and in person in San Francisco in August. A live online in September at the Leadership Summit I'm teaching, as well as live online at the Leadership in Cloud Summit session that's going on in the October timeframe. So all of those are out there. Another piece of information I'll just share with you. I started this in the spring and I've had some situations come up myself that's delayed this. If you follow me or want to follow me on LinkedIn, you'll probably see within the next 3 to 4 weeks some information coming out about contextual information. What type of stuff should we be collecting? How can we start to put this together? I have a mind map going. We've been collecting, getting data available for this, and we're going to be publishing this out. As post it out on LinkedIn. There'll probably be some blog posts, et cetera, coming on the sand sides when we finalize this, but work myself and some other people that I know, we've been pulling this together. I had to shelve it for a while, but it's coming back. So we'll have more stuff coming out on context, the type of context, and hopefully how you can collect specific commands or tools or functionality that everyone will be able to use to get context. So with that, I'll pass it, I think, back to Laura, just to see if there's any questions out there.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. One of the questions was, does SAMS have any automation courses? We have 2 in our cloud curriculum, and I put the links to them in the chat. One is cloud security and DevSecOps automation, and the other is continuous automation for enterprise and cloud compliance. Another question we have is, are there any CPEs for this webcast? The answer is yes. After the webcast is over, you'll be able to log into your SANS account and pull down, you get 1 CPE for the webcast. Other than that, I don't have any other questions. So thank you so much for coming and being with us today. Thank you, Jonathan, for your presentation and bringing this content to the SANS community. Audience, we hope that you come back for parts 2 and 3. And at this point in time, we will wrap it up. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Appreciate you taking the time today, and we hope to see you in August.